So here we are ready to start our color. I've got my photocopy ready. If your photocopy is a little bit dark, I have posted all of the original black and white photos to Schoology so you can just find the famous face that you were using. And it might be a little bit easier to see which areas are light and which areas are dark. And we're going to kind of throw back to our color wheel charts. And you can use that to help you decide some sort of color harmony, some sort of color family or families that you can use for your portrait. So I, for example, am thinking I want to do cool colors in the actual person, and then I will contrast that with some warm colors in the background. So I kind of have some colors set up here the way that I want to sort of use them. I may put in a few greens into my cool colors. I haven't quite decided that yet. But we'll see as I start to add color. And you can sort of start this however you want. If you want to start with your darkest colors first, you can definitely do that. If you want to start with your lightest colors first, you can do that. I'm probably going to start with my lightest, and I'll work a little bit in each of them so you can get an idea as to how this is going to work with the colored pencil. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit, so you can really get close up. You can see what I'm doing. And I'm still looking at my photocopy. It's over here on the side. You can't see it because it's off screen. But I'm going to be using that to help me sort of figure out how light or how dark or even more of a mid-tone I should be using for my colors. So since I'm using cool colors, I like blues. And I'm going to start right in the nose area just so we can kind of see a little bit of what a highlight's going to look like, a little bit of what a mid-tone's going to look like, a little bit of what the shadowy colors are going to look like, and then we can kind of sort of take it from there and how we're going to do this. So I'm going to start with this highlight. I've got my lightest color blue, and what I would like to see you all doing, now we've done a lot of work with colored pencil before, trying to get from as light as we could go to as dark as we could go. And since this is a highlight area, I might leave a little bit of white. I'm going to try and make it almost these pieces look like they're three-dimensional little sections. And to do that, I'm going to try and get that range of values from lightest to darkest with my colors. So since this is my highlight, I'm going to kind of leave it much lighter. I'm not going to add any dark blue into it because it is a highlight piece. I've got another one here under the nose, so I'm going to kind of go in there. Real light, but then towards my edges, I'm going to start to get a little bit darker. And really start to make some of these things pop a little bit. So you can see I've kind of got it lighter in the center. I'm pushing a little bit more towards my edges with this lighter color for that highlight. So now I want to use a dark color. And when we were mixing colored pencil, we always talked about going from the darkest color first and then ending with your lightest. So if I'm going to make a darker blue, so here's my blue. That's a dark color. But I really want to get into this dark sort of area that's black in my photo. I don't want it to be black here. I want it to be really dark, but I don't want it to be black. So I'm going to start off with a layer of black, but you can tell it's not super dark. It's looking kind of gray. And that's on purpose because, again, I don't want to go as dark as I can go right now. I want to have the ability to go darker if I need to. And I'm probably going to go a bit darker where the nostrils are. So this whole area is dark in my photo. So now I'm going to take my blue, and that's where I'm really going to push, especially on my edges, because I want this, I still want it to look blue. I just want it to look like a really dark blue. And then sort of like just medium to light pressure over the middle here. I don't want it to be so light that it reads like a highlight, but I do want it to be lighter than my edges because, again, we're trying to do those transitions. I know we struggled a little bit with it when we were doing the colored pencil worksheets and when we were doing it on our Zentangle project. So I really want you guys to focus on trying to get those transitions, trying to really push and get from light to dark. And here, obviously, the whole thing is going to be fairly dark, but with a little bit of sort of that mid-range darkness in that shadow area. So you can tell I left it a little bit lighter here towards my edges. I'm really pushing now with my blue to get that really sort of dark, intense blue. I'm going into the nostrils and pushing as hard as I can because those are black, black, black. So I'm going to make it a really, really dark blue. And then I've got my shadow area kind of complete. And now I'm going to work into a little bit of the mid-tone color. So for the mid-tone, I'm going to use my light and my dark blue. So the first thing I'm going to do, because it is a mid-tone, I'm going to go across the whole thing with a sort of light version of my darkest color, which is the blue, the darker blue. And really sort of work over that whole area all at once. And I know we want to get this done fast. I don't know what it is. You guys want to work as fast as you possibly can. But take your time. If you go really, really, really fast, you're going to get a lot of texture in here, and it's going to make your color blends a lot more difficult. So you're actually just making things harder for yourself. And it's going to look very rushed. I know you guys think, well, I just want to get it done, but at the same time, you do want to try to put some quality and time into your work. So now I'm going to come in with the lighter blue, and I'm mixing the two colors together, and you can tell it's different from my highlight color, which is just this light blue, and it's definitely different from this shadowy color, which has that darker blue with the black mixed in with it. So I'm going to sort of work again around my edges a little bit. I want it to be darker and then sort of fade to a lighter version of this color towards the middle of the shape that's been created. And you start to almost get this stained glass effect with your color, with your work, and it's just sort of like an interesting juxtaposition, if you will. And it just makes an interesting piece of art. It's not just we're trying to match skin tones. We're actually trying to just look at highlights, midtones, and shadows and recreate that with the colored pencil. So I'm going to work on the nose just a little bit more so you can sort of see how that starts to come together. And then I'll take a break and get some more done and come back in when I start working into the background and finishing up this project with you guys. So I'll work a little bit and we'll speed the video up ever so slightly so it's not just me talking. All right, so that's how I have started my portrait with this neurographic design and with the color. So as you can see, I start to get those highlights, those shadows. It really starts to come together with the color. So this is what I'm going to continue working on. I'll come back and we'll see how I'm going to contrast some of those colors and make a decision for how I'm going to finish this up. All right, artist, so you can see I've made some progress on my portrait, and I've been working on looking for those highlights, midtone, shadows based on my photocopy. So clearly it's not finished, but I did want to get to talking about what I'm going to do in the background, because I'm going to be using my knowledge of some color theory that we did on our watercolor charts that can translate to this also. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Now, right now the majority of my color is blue, but I'm thinking cool colors for this. And I'm actually going to contrast that in my background with warm colors. And if I think about what blue's complement is orange. So I'm going to start to color the same way I've been doing this. I'm going to sort of start out with my edges and work my way to the center, and I'm trying to do that transitioning from light to dark. I'm utilizing the shape to do that, meaning that I'm going to try and keep it lighter in the center of this shape and start to get a little darker with my color towards the outside. But there's also an opportunity to mix colors here. So sometimes when you mix black with a lighter color, like orange or yellow or even the pink, the black really sort of takes over the color and it doesn't look wonderful. It'll look dark, but sometimes it's not exactly what we're imagining. Sometimes it's a lot darker than what we think. So I'm going to use another color to really get this orange to get darker and a little bit more intense. And I'm going to come back with my orange in just a minute, but thinking about the colors that are closest to orange, right? I've got red on one side and yellow on the other. So if I want to go darker, I'm going to look at this red. And that's really where I'm going to sort of add some extra color into the edge. And you can already see it's starting to make that orange look even darker than it is. Mostly at the edge. And then I'm going to come back in with my orange because I really want the orange to be the more dominant of the colors. I don't want it to be red right now. And you can see it sort of starts to give it that glowy effect that transitioning your colors from light to dark will do. And now my background, I'm going to do all kinds of warm colors. So I'm going to show this to you again with a different warm color. This time I'm going to use yellow. So yellow is going to be super bright. It's probably not going to pick up too much on the screen. But I also want to show you another way to create value by using a complementary color. Right, we're talking about our complements already, so I'm taking my yellow and I'm starting to push a little bit towards my edges. I'm trying to make it a little bit more intense. You can kind of see that happening on the screen. But yellow by itself doesn't have a lot of high value contrast with it because it's such a bright light color. So I do want to add sort of a darker color into this, and I have a couple of options, right? Yellow's complement is purple. And we do have a purple colored pencil, but we also have one that's a warmer purple. This is leaning more towards a red purple. And for this particular color that I want to make, I'm actually going to use that warmer purple, kind of like that red purple, if you will, that we talked about. And I'm going to start to add that into the darker areas of my yellow. And it's going to make the yellow start to look darker without it being too greenish. Remember when we were mixing our colors and we mixed black into our yellow and it kind of turned green? The same thing happens when you're mixing it with any other medium. So in this case, it's colored pencil. So that same thing is going to start to happen if you start to use black for everything. I'm not saying you can't use black, but sometimes you don't get the color effect that you're really looking for when it comes to that. So it's a little hard to tell on camera. Let me see if I can get it a little closer so you guys can see it. But you can see I got my edges a little bit darker, and I may work that up a little bit more. Maybe I will take some of that straight up purple and mix it in there also, and you can already see that's making a big difference. It's starting to make it look much, much darker just by adding some of that purple in there. But remember, I'm not adding black. Black doesn't necessarily need to make every other color dark. You can use other colors to do that as well. And that really sort of got those edges a little bit darker. All right, so that's how we're going to finish up these neurographic portraits. So as you can see, I've already got a good amount done on the face. I still got to continue with that. I started working up this background in these warmer colors. Do you have to do this specific color scheme? No, you could do the face. If your favorite color is purple, maybe you do all purples. Maybe the whole thing is all purples. Maybe you decide that green is the way you want to go and you want to use green everywhere. Or maybe you just only want to use 2 different colors over the whole thing. Those are your choices that you're going to make. But I want you to think about how those colors are going to interact together and how you can play one off of the other. Once I have my nice warm colors in the background, that face is really going to stand out because of those cool colors and really sort of show and highlight the portrait that I'm trying to create here, okay? So just keep that in mind as you're moving forward. I wish you guys luck. I will try to post a finished version of this if I can get it done before I am out. And happy coloring, artists, and I hope you enjoy this project.